Welcome to Study Time, a televised home learning program produced by Rwanda Basic Education Board.
Hello dear wonderful students of Senior 2. This is a chemistry lesson. We are going to be looking at unit number 9, and this is lesson number 2. In the unit number 9, you remember, you are aware that we are talking about electrolytes and non-electrolytes. So in this lesson number 2, we'll be talking about the applications of electrolytes. But remember what we talked about in the previous lesson. I'll just take you through briefly in the previous lesson, and we see what we talked about. Basically, we talked about the electrolytes. If you remember, this was the last part where we had to divide this one into two parts. So this one, we had two types of the electrolytes. We said we have strong electrolytes. Then we have weak electrolytes. Weak electrolytes. Then we gave some examples of these weak electrolytes. So we gave a number of them. So here we had strong acids. We had strong bases or soluble bases, and we have soluble salts. We have soluble salts, or the soluble salts that can be able to dissolve in water and form ions, are able to conduct electric current. So you should be able to give some examples, a number of examples. For example, if we talk about strong acids, then what comes into your mind? Sulfuric acid must be there. You should have hydrochloric acid. Then you should have nitric acid. So in solution form, all these are very soluble in water, and they form ions, so they can be able to conduct electric current. So here we have strong bases. The strong bases are alkalis. An alkali is a soluble base. So we have sodium hydroxide, we have potassium hydroxide, and calcium hydroxide, which is slightly soluble. So here you'll talk about soluble salts. So you'll talk about the sulfates. So when you talk about the sulfates, that means you exclude the sulfate of barium, you exclude the sulfate of lead, you exclude the sulfate of calcium, because those sulfates are not soluble. But the rest are soluble, so they are included here. You can talk about even the carbonates, but when you talk about the carbonates, you will only include the carbonates of group 1 and ammonium carbonate, because those are the only ones that are soluble. The rest are not soluble. So you talk about potassium carbonate, sodium carbonate. Those are the most common soluble carbonates. You can talk about all nitrates are included here. So you should know from the solubility rules that you talked about in the previous units, then you should know that all the nitrates are soluble in water. And therefore, if they are soluble in water, they are capable of forming ions. And therefore, they will conduct electric current. You can talk about even chlorides, the chlorides. So when you talk about the chlorides, you only exclude the chloride of silver. That one will be excluded. The chloride of silver is insoluble, and the chloride of lead, it is also insoluble. So those ones won't dissolve in water easily to form the ions. And therefore, so these are other examples. So under the weak electrolytes, we talked about organic acids. Organic acids, or organic acids. We gave some examples of these organic acids. The most common example that we gave was acetic acid. Acetic acid, which is the biggest component, the highest percentage, the component in the vinegar that contributes the highest percentage is acetic acid. Then you can talk about, because the organic acids are very many, but I've just given an example. You can talk about carbonic acid. You can talk about sulfurous acid. You can talk about phosphoric acid and many others. So these are some of the weak electrolytes. They do not conduct electricity strongly. So this time around, we are just going to look at the uses or the applications of the salts. This time, all the salts that are electrolytes, those are the ones that we are talking about. Salts which are electrolytes, because we are talking about the applications of electrolytes. The applications of electrolytes, that means we are going to talk about all this. Whether weak or strong, we can be able to talk about this. But we will not be able to cover all of them. There are some of them that we will just only be discussing. And the first one that we are talking about is sodium chloride. Sodium chloride, if you go on the screen there, it's commonly known as salt or table salt. In our homes, when we say salt, then you know it is either table salt. We don't keep these other salts in our homes. But in school, in our laboratories at school, when we're talking about the salt, we are not referring to the table salt. We have a number of salts. We have mentioned very many of them: the nitrates, the sulfates, the carbonates, the chlorides, and very many of them. So all those are salts. That is when it comes to the language of the laboratory. So the language of the laboratory is different from that we use at home. It is a major ingredient in the edible salt that is sprinkled on food to make taste better. Maybe you can, some food, if you don't put salt in food, the taste may not taste better. So one purpose of adding the salt in the food is for that taste that it gives the food. So there is a taste for the food, but then it also adds some other special taste to the food that you are taking. So that is very important, the taste. However, when we are taking the salt, it is very important that we take the salt which is iodized. Why iodized salt? So you have to make sure that whenever you're going to buy the salt, make sure that salt is iodized. It contains iodine. What is the purpose of the iodine? So the iodine deficiency is very important. So it is very important, rather when you are suffering from the iodine. Stop. I can't proceed. It knows a computer. Ntago nshobora gukora itari kucharginga. Tubigenze gute none se niba bitagaragara neza? Kireka kubanza gucharginga. No kubanza gucharginga kugira ngo okay. Nanyize ko wenda iyi nuza ari itarimo. Ariko niba ari charger nago mbikunda. Kako nta muriro urimo. Ngombe kwasenda hera he. So we were talking about that the salt that we are supposed to take should be iodized salt. And why iodized salt? We are saying it is very important because it stops the deficiency of iodine in our bodies. We need iodine in our bodies. For what? It prevents the goiter. The thyroid glands, the swelling of the thyroid glands is caused by the deficiency of iodine in the food. That swelling that usually comes over here in the neck. So is as a result of iodine deficiency. It helps in metabolism, that is how the food is used in the body by producing the thyroxine hormones, which are very important, and very many other uses. So that is why whenever we are going to take salt, that is the table salt, we have to ensure that this salt is iodized or it contains the iodine. So we can go to another important part of the salts, because we are just looking at the salts. Nitric acid is also a salt. So it is a corrosive acid, so it is very important that when you are handling it, so you have to handle it with care because of its corrosivity. So it is used in manufacture of fertilizers and also used in as one of the ingredients in certain types of liquid rocket fuels. So here are some of the uses where nitric acid is applied. 80%, so you see the whole part of this, or this part here. This is it is 80% nitric acid applied in manufacture of fertilizers. Ammonium nitrate is one of the examples. So 80% of the nitric acid is used in manufacture of fertilizers. Then we have some other uses. We have dyes. Those are colored substances. We have polyamides. These are very long molecules. We have polyurethanes. We have even other uses that we are not even mentioning here. So there are a number of them that can be, it can be applied in a number of uses that are not mentioned here. So we can look at the sulfuric acid, the uses of the sulfuric acid. These are not the only uses, remember. There are so many other uses, but we have decided to indicate the few uses that we have here. So probably the main uses. So it is used in a number of, in industry to make a number of substances. 30% goes to making fertilizers. So that is ammonium phosphate, ammonium sulfates, or these, the 30% of the sulfuric acid goes in the manufacture of fertilizers. 15% goes to the manufacture of detergents. The detergents like Omo, like Nome, like TOS, and many others. These are substances that we use for cleaning purposes, and they are all also used as disinfectants. 11% goes to the paints and pigments. 11% goes to the paints and pigments. That is sulfuric acid. 5% goes to the fibers, rayon and paper, in paper manufacturing industries and other fibers. 5% goes to the plastics that we use in our homes. Some of them are manufactured not by only sulfuric acid, but sulfuric acid could be one of the components that are used. 30% goes to the used as an electrolyte in car batteries. So the liquid that is in the battery of the car that makes the vehicle start, because when you don't have this battery in your vehicle, the vehicle cannot start. The liquid that is there that provides the current, that generates the current to start, or generates the power to start the vehicle, is sulfuric acid, dilute sulfuric acid. Then other uses include explosives, pesticides, dyes, and the batteries that we have also mentioned. All these take 30%. The electrolyte in car batteries, the pesticide, the dyes, and explosives, all those ones take only 30%. Ammonium chloride, that's another use that we will need to look at. Ammonium chloride is a main component of dry cells. If you have torches, then these torches are called, they are commonly known as dry cells, which are called Lancashire cells. The Lancashire cells are dry cells. They contain the electrolyte inside, and this electrolyte inside that provides the current is ammonium chloride. And there is another electrolyte. It is not only the ammonium chloride, there is also manganese oxide. So when you look at the cell, the components that are over there, we just tried to, this is the Lancashire shell or the dry cell. Inside here, you see a mixture of manganese dioxide and powdered carbon, and then you see ammonium chloride paste. These are used as ammonium chloride is used as an electrolyte. So the electrolyte, the purpose of the electrolyte is to conduct the electric current. So all this part that you look at here, so it contains almost the bigger part of this, takes a bigger part of this dry cell, this ammonium chloride. That is one important use of ammonium chloride as a salt, as an electrolyte. It is also a salt. Then there are some other medical uses. Ammonium chloride is used as an expectorant in cough medicine. So if you have ever suffered from the cough, there is sometimes when the cough comes when it is dry. Like one of the characteristics of the coronavirus, COVID-19, one of the characteristics is that dry cough. And when you have the dry cough and you go to the hospital or to the clinic, the medicine that they give you contains ammonium chloride, and it is called expectorant. So it softens. And then when you cough, then some mucus can come out. That means there is a way how it softens the space inside the inside the part of the space that moves to the lungs. It becomes a bit soft, and therefore mucus can be formed. When you spit, then some mucus comes out. So it softens it, and that is they are called medically, that is the medical term they use as expectorants. In expectorant action, it is used by irritative action on the bronchial mucosa. That is the part which causes the production of excess respiratory tract fluid, which presumably is easier to cough up. That is what I was just talking about. That mucus which comes from the bronchial mucosa that comes out. Ammonium salts are irritant to the gastric mucosa and may induce nausea and vomiting. That means if you have taken some poison or something that is not maybe that may harm you in form of the poison, this ammonium chloride can be used. You take it in, that is in the hospital, not anywhere. So you take it, and then because it induces nausea and vomiting, so the poison can come out when you vomit. Ammonium chloride is used as a systematic acidifying agent in the treatment of severe metabolic alkalosis. In oral acid loading tests to diagnose distal renal tubular acidosis, to maintain the urine at the acid pH in the treatment of some urinary tract disorders. So the acidity of the urine changes depending on the substances that you take in the body, types of the food. So this ammonium chloride is used to reduce the acidity of the urine. And then all those ones are called urinary tract disorders. The pH increase, rather the pH decrease. When it is acidity, then the pH decreases. As it decreases, then you need, because the pH of the urine and the blood must be balanced. Balanced by what? Then by taking this ammonium chloride. Sodium hydroxide, very important salt that we meet in most of the substances that we use at home. So in terms of the percentages, we are seeing paper, that is in the manufacturing of the paper. Sodium hydroxide is used, takes 17%. Gas scrubbing and neutralization, this takes 19%. Organic chemicals, this takes 25%. Others takes 10%. Surfactants, this includes the soaps, the detergents, they are all called surfactants, so it takes 10%. And other inorganic chemicals, which will take 10%. But let's look at them in details. Sodium hydroxide in cleaning and disinfectant products. The disinfectant products are the ones that reduce either the growth of microorganisms or kill microorganisms that attack our bodies. Sodium hydroxide is used to manufacture soap and a variety of detergents used in homes and commercial applications. The soap, the main component, one of the major components of the soap and detergents is sodium hydroxide. And you know the use of the soap. Chlorine bleach is produced by combining chlorine and sodium hydroxide. So the chlorine bleaching is removing the color. So when you say sodium chloride, this is an example of the bleach that we are talking about. So you have sodium hydroxide, which combines with the chlorine to form the sodium chloride, plus the sodium hypochlorite plus water. This is the one that we call chlorine bleach. This is the bleaching agent here. It is called chlorine bleach. So the chlorine bleach used in removing the colors. We have sodium hydroxide in pharmaceuticals and medicine, manufacture of variety of medicines from a number of them, pain relievers like aspirin and coagulants. Those are the ones that prevent blood clotting, and cholesterol-reducing medications. That is reducing the high content of fats in the body. Sodium hydroxide in energy sector is used in fuel cells. So there are a number of cells, different types of cells. I mentioned the Lackland shell, that is a dry cell, but there are some other types of cells, which one of them is the fuel cell. So sodium hydroxide is used there, like batteries, and efficiently produce electricity. Treatment in water, so treatment for water consumption in our homes, sodium hydroxide to control water acidity, so it can also be used because it is a very strong base. And the sodium hydroxide, which is also used as a disinfectant and as a bleach at the same time. So you have sodium hydroxide in food production, that is either to remove the skins from tomatoes, potatoes, and other fruits and vegetables, for canning, that is packing ingredients, because it has that pH that can reduce the growth of some bacteria. In wood and paper products, when we are making the paper, in the pulp industry, sodium chloride, sodium hydroxide is also applied. So it is in the paper recycling process as well. It is used to separate ink from the paper fibers, allowing the paper fibers to be reused again. So in recycling, some papers, the newspaper companies recycle the papers and use them again. So they use sodium hydroxide to do such work. In production of aluminum, in extraction of aluminum, we call it seeding. So aluminum hydroxide, sodium hydroxide is used in there in extraction of the aluminum. So we have potassium nitrate in production of the fireworks, and even some toothpastes. You know, the purpose of the fireworks and toothpaste is very well known. So this is some of the salts, but not all the salts. There are some of the salts, but not all of them. Please, you can also look at some other uses of the salts, maybe like the carbonates. We have not mentioned the carbonates. We have not mentioned some sulfates, and many others. Dear students, I hope we'll be together in the next session. Please stay safe. Bye-bye.